Good day, Sir Harilia. My name is A.J. Luchin from Grade 9 St. Andrew. And for my topic today is all about the summary of COVID-19 pandemic. Should I start? COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in severe economic and social impacts around the world. Young people are particularly vulnerable to the disruption the pandemic has caused, and many are now at risk of being left behind in education, economics opportunities, and health and well-being during the crucial stage of their life development. Young people are more likely to be unemployed or do precarious job contracts and working arrangements, and lack adequate social protection. At the same time, young people are responding to the crisis through public health promotion, volunteering, and innovation. Young people will form a key element in an inclusive recovery and its achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals during the decade of action. However, the response and recovery must be done in a way that protects the human rights of all youth. So, COVID-19 threatens to have devastating consequences in least development countries. Health systems may be unable to cope with a mysterious increase in infections, and this country lack of resources to cope with the socio-economic consequence of lockdowns around the world. Unless bold policy actions are taken by the international community, achieving the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030 deadline will likely slip out of reach. Okay. The coronavirus, also known as COVID-19 pandemic, presents a risk to key dimension of national institutions highlighted in Sustainable Development Goal 16 in terms of limiting transparency and access to information, eroding safeguards to accountability, including integrity violations, fraud and corruptions, and restricting participations and engagement. However, these institutional dimensions are also critical to providing a resilient response to the crisis in many countries. Government, accountability institutions, and civil society are innovating to mitigate institutional disruptions while ensuring an effective response to the pandemic. In the aftermath of the crisis, drawing lessons in terms of the resilience of national institutions will be key undertaking in order to ensure effective and accountable government. For the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development to be achieved, effectively delivering for public service is needed, including the response to COVID-19 pandemic. If not contained, the pandemic will jeopardize meeting by 2030 deadline by diverting resources from development efforts to crisis response. The public servant sits at the heart of ensuring effective response to the crisis, whether as a frontline worker in healthcare or devising strategies and plans to mitigate its impact. This policy paper outlines 9 key roles public servants have been and must continue to play to ensure an effective response to the pandemic. Ensuring continuity to a public service, providing service before safeguarding humanness in practice, quick thinking, creativity, and innovation, inform and awareness creation, strategic thinking and planning, amidst chaos, sustaining resilience, and building a better, effective, and more responsive public service. Building and enhancing state legitimacy, government credibility, and people's trust. Resources allocation and distributed accountability, and collaborative and network leadership. In order to effectively play these roles, a public servant must have a profile characterized by the following: self-sacrifice, trustworthiness, risk-taking, versatility, adaptability, creativity, transparency, and accountability, They must be knowledgeable and skilled, persistent, empathetic, collaborative, and competitive. And the use of technology, all driven by humanists in their personality. The following policy recommendations are made: comprehensive public service capacity development, institutionalization of early warning emergency plan, preparedness and quick response in the public service, networking, collaborating, sharing, and learning from successful practice, and mistake to build better and more effective public service for the future pandemics response. Accountable and people-focused leadership, the public sector institution, and providing for financial resources for pandemic and crisis before they happen. Okay. Sweet. This policy brief discusses the role of effective governance and its particular the role of the relationship between the state and the people in building countries' resiliency and in responding to and managing nationwide crises such as COVID-19 pandemic. After outlining key elements of state-people governance relationships, the brief puts forward five policy message emphasizing that the COVID-19 pandemic and crisis, while a challenge, also presents an opportunity to design and operate the resilient public health infrastructure and effective institutions for handling crisis. The provision of essential service to all must be at the core of state-people governance relationship. Social protection for all, especially the poor and vulnerable, is a prerequisite to fostering a resilient society. Credible, legitimate, and trusted state leadership is critical all the time, but even more so during a nationwide crisis such as the COVID-19 pandemic, and government in times of crisis must endeavor to keep the country unified, foster solidarity, and avoid social disintegration. So, this is from World Health Organization, how home care for people with suspected, how to take home care for people with suspected or confirmed COVID-19 patient. Okay, first, ensure that ill person